Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today in War Thunder we have another devblog, and it's on the FV510 Warrior. This is the British IFV, which is coming to the game in updates 1.81. I had a look at it on the dev server, and to be honest I wasn't that impressed, but there has at least been some changes since the first dev server. Unfortunately the second dev server wasn't up for very long. I am guessing we're going to get a third one, but the basic changes from the first dev server video that you saw from me and the second dev server changes was that its BR was dropped by 0.3, so it's at 8.0 now instead of 8.3. It also got access to the Milan 2 ATGM, not just the Milan 1. But the Milan 1 ATGM that was present was docked 20mm of penetration. So on the first dev server it was sat at 600, and on the second it was sat at 580, and I believe the Milan 2 was sat at 700mm of penetration. It was also a rank 3 modification. I would have got round to it, but unfortunately the dev server was closed in unforeseen circumstances. So, let's talk about the Warrior. It's a rank 6 IFV. In actuality, in real life, they say in this video here that it is still used today, but what it's used for is very much APC stuff. As it says, they say it's currently in service. This is very much an infantry support vehicle. It's basically designed from the army lads I've talked to. It's there to support tanks in being able to kill infantry, which may get close to the tanks and also support infantry in that way. It is not designed at all to go up against other fighting vehicles. And obviously, in War Thunder, there ain't infantry, and all there is other vehicles. So yeah, that kind of sucks. At least it has the Milan ATGM on it, so it will be able to pen some stuff. The main thing I'm looking at from the Warrior is the idea that it should be pretty good at scouting. It has a bit of speed behind it. It has the ATGM, very much like the BMP in a way. If you've ever played the BMP 1P, the upgraded BMP with the modification of the actual useful ATGM, you'll find that it's quite a nippy machine. You're able to sit in pretty decent areas, quite low to the ground, and be able to scout over them, whether it be a hill or a rock or whatever. The issue with the Warrior is the Warrior is bigger than an Abrams. It's a massive vehicle. It's absolutely huge. And the reason for it being absolutely huge is because it's designed to carry about 20 people. So with that said, what you have is an absolutely huge vehicle with not a lot of armor and a gun which is completely useless against everything it's going to fight. Now, with that said, at least it's 8.0, we are getting added a few more vehicles like it, such as the BMP2, so it'll have some competition in that realm of not a lot of armor, so its gun should be useful. At least against them. We're going to have to see how many people actually use them, though, because the meta is medium tanks, especially around 8.0, and, well, this gun's going to be useless unless you get to the side of it and pretty close. The gun itself is a 30mm. It has a 6-round clip on the dev server, and then it has to do a short reload, but see it much more as a pom-pom gun, like bang, 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 like that. It's not a fast-firing gun like the BMP2s, so it is very much a slow rate-of-fire gun, at least compared to other autocannons we see. Now, with that said, the 30mm has access to HE and also APDS, I believe. Is that what they say in this article? Because you can see what rounds it is, once again, in the dev server video. And, yeah, it says high explosive and armor piercing. I believe it was HVAP rounds when I looked at the actual, the belt itself. And if it wasn't, it was APFSDS. Now, that could pen up to 100mm of penetration. So with that said, you will be able to go through the side of a lot of vehicles. Going through the front ain't going to work, though. So you're going to have to, if you see a vehicle through the front, you're going to have to knock its barrel, and you're going to have to hope that your missile can do some decent damage to it if it can penetrate. When we look at the 8.0 BR, there are definitely some vehicles out there which will kind of scoff at a 580mm ATGM, but there aren't that many of them. And especially once you get the Milan 2, the 700. One of the nice things about the Milan ATGMs, what I found at least compared to others, is their speed. They are very fast through the air. The issue that I had though on the first dev server, which I didn't get to test on the second, so this may have been fixed, but the ATGM was firing into the ground and then up. So what would happen is, if you looked at a target about 500 meters away or less, the ATGM would arc into the ground and then go towards the targets. Actually, at any range, this is what it did, but at longer ranges, it was able to not hit the ground and then go forward, whereas 500 or less, generally the distance you're going to be engaging with most vehicles that you have in the game, it was just arcing straight into the ground. So if they fix that, grand. If they haven't fixed that, then, well, we're going to have a few issues. Anyway, with that said, the other interesting addition to the FV510 Warrior is that it has an armor package. So this is something that we're seeing with a bunch of vehicles, and we've seen a lot of modifications now which are just add-ons to specific vehicles. My guess is the idea is that they don't want to create two separate vehicles and they just want to smash it into one because they don't see the upgrades as that meaningful to create a new vehicle, and I can understand that. So examples of this would be like gun pods on something like the A36, the PV2, the PV2D Harpoon, sorry. And then other things such as weapon changes, so A26B, I think it is, when you can get either the 50s or the 37, the Key 43, where you can either get the 7.7s or the 12.7s. And when we look at some of the new vehicles, the Conqueror just got the Super Conqueror upgrade, which is basically just add-on armor, spaced armor on the top of the front of the turret and then the front of the upper glacis. And then on the BMP2, you get some add-on armor side skirts, which aren't that useful. And then you get the Warriors. The Warriors is a quite extensive package of useless armor. So what you have on it, well, useless is the wrong word. Against the majority of stuff you're going to fight, it's useless. Against specific things, it's not. So when we look at the Warrior, what you see it here is in its fully upgraded state. So let's get a picture of not a side view. Do you have one which isn't a side view? No. Okay, well, we're going to have to do this. So the Warrior, when it doesn't have this modification package, I'll just check. Can you see? Yeah, you can see my mouse. Okay. So when it doesn't have the upgrade package, it doesn't have this line of composite armor here. It doesn't have this line of composite armor here, and it doesn't have this extra armor on the front. So it's much more bare bones compared to what you would think. Now, the armor on the sides that is added is 70mm of composite. The armor on the front that is added is 70 and 50mm of composite, I believe. And then under that, there's also another layer of composite armor to try and keep your driver alive. So if you're the driver in this thing, you may actually survive a shot. If you're not the driver, then, well, you're kind of boned. But from the side, the extra armor package should help against a lot of small arms fire, or at least you'd hope so. In our testing, the AA machines such as the Gepard, which are at the same BR, and the Type 87, and also the Chieftain Marksman, which are all things you would class as lightly armored, and, coming from a point of view where those are the things you're supposed to be able to kill effectively, they were able to penetrate the side of this thing. And so, with that said, I'm not sure the use of this add-on armor yet. It depends how much it kills the speed. If the speed gets annihilated, then you lose that ability of being that light tank which is able to go around the battlefield and do a lot of damage by scouting, not by actually killing things. So what I want from a scout is something that's nippy, something that's quick, something that's able to get to areas that are the tanks it takes them too long to do so to be viable, and then I can scout the whole enemy team, and my team can be, good around that. The issue with this armor package is the weight, and obviously there's no engine upgrade for said weight. So with that said, we're going to have to see how it impacts it. Also, something that has been talked about, because the BMP2 has pretty much no armor under, the add-on armor. We're talking about 15 millimeters, 20 millimeters, so it's definitely going to get hull broken. The Warrior isn't, or at least it shouldn't be when we look at Gaijin's rules around hull breaking. So the first thing is, it has 15 millimeters of armor pretty much all round. So the sides are 50, the front is 50, and I believe the back may be 40 or 30, and or maybe even 50. But anyway, it's all above that 30 range. And 30 and lower is, when they talked about it in a Q&A, 30 is the baseline. If you have 30 or less, we're looking at a hull break scenario. Well, the hull of the Warrior doesn't have that, or at least it has it in very specific little areas, but the main thing isn't. So, one-shotting this is going to be at least a little bit harder to do compared to other stuff. Now, does that mean killing it isn't going to be hard? No, it's going to be very easy to kill it. And the reason is it's got a 3-man crew. And if you have any MBT gun, you're going to be able to go through this extra composite armor and the armor below it, kill the driver, and then kill the crew. There are 3 people. Let's just try and get a decent view of one of these. Looks like it doesn't exist. Wonderful stuff. Right, we're going to have to do this one. So, my camera is going to cover that, so no, let's not do that. Let's do this one, right? So, you have the driver here, on the left-hand side as you're looking forward. Then you have the commander and the gunner in here. I'm guessing the command, when it comes to the gun, there is no loader required, so therefore you have the commander, gunner, and driver. So you have a 3-man crew, so if you pop the turret, the thing's dead, in realistic. All you have to do is shoot the driver, and if you don't want to shoot the driver, you just shoot next to him where there isn't the added composite armor. That's where the engine, the transmission is. It'll set this thing on fire, it'll go pop. Also, something to take into account is the ATGMs are stored back here. So they're stored here and here. What you have, I believe, is 5 or 6 ATGMs available for this thing, so not a lot. And they are sat in rows over here. So if you shoot this area, they should go pop and blow up the whole thing. So that is something to look at as well. I am looking forward to this machine, and the only reason I'm looking forward to it is because Britain doesn't have a lot of scout vehicles right now in the game. And with that said, I really enjoy scouting. The reason why I'm looking forward to the TAM, the BMP2, the Warrior, hopefully the Bradley, all of these vehicles to me sound like wonders because they are scout vehicles, and that is where I've enjoyed ground forces over the last year or so. I like the idea of having a disadvantage, but also having a different playstyle, which you can do something different. Because if you just play medium and heavy tanks over and over again, the game gets kind of boring. So with this change in tactics, it makes it a little bit fun. Now, it can also be frustrating it can be incredibly frustrating playing it, because it means that you put yourself at a disadvantage, and if your team doesn't make up for that disadvantage by killing the stuff you scout, then you're kind of left in a situation where all you are is a mobile ATGM launcher, and you gotta hope that you are downed. With the fact that we're getting a lot of vehicles around this BR, I think it's going to be fun to use for me personally. For the general player base, I think they'd just rather use a chieftain. At least nowadays, with the addition of the Warrior, you have an interesting lineup. You've got the chieftain, then you've got the Warrior, and then you've got the chieftain marksman. So you've got a lineup which at least looks interesting at the end of the day. One thing that we do have to mention is there's been a lot of 9.0 vehicles added, Leopard A1A1 L44, the TAM, and then we have the T55AM, which has been dropped to 8.7, by the way. Then you've got the XM1, which I'm sure will make a comeback now that 9.0 is becoming a thing. And we've had all of these vehicles added to this 9.0 bracket, trying to make it a bracket in and of itself so 9.0s don't always get dragged up to 10.0. That means that if a lot of people play 9.0, well, tanks like the Warrior are going to be up-tiered a lot into the 8-7 brackets and 9-0 brackets, and with these armoured vehicles, you need to be in a situation where you're at the lowest BR possible. So if you need to use your weapons, you can be as effective as possible. But obviously, if you're up-tiered all the time, which seems to be, when I look at all of the new vehicles, that seems to be what's going to happen, I feel kind of bad for the Warrior because of that. Another thing I do have to mention is that the 30mm used here is not a stabilized one. So when you look at the BMP2 and you see it's 30mm and it's stabilized, it's rapid firing all over the place, yeah, that's not the Warrior. The Warrior's one is not stabilized, it bounces all over the place. This is not an accurate gun on the move, and therefore, if you are moving, you're going to have to rely on the ATGM, and you have limited rounds of said ATGM. I think overall a lot of people are going to overlook this vehicle, and I can't blame them. The weaponry on it isn't great. The fact that it's more of an APC than an IFV is going to put people off. Also, people prefer playing mediums and heavies compared to these lighter vehicles that we have, but I'm going to enjoy it. And so from a personal point of view, I'm very happy it's in the game. From a gameplay point of view, it's going to be sad that we're not going to see a lot of them. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.